Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast, and we're coming at you roughly 24 hours after a very impressive 6-2 Senators victory over the Tampa Bay Lightning at Canadian Tire Center. Man, it's starting to look like they might do it. Don't even want to jinx it, but they are playing very, very good hockey again. And let's get into all of it. Lots coming up with 4 games to go. My name is Steve Warren. That's the coach, Greg Kennedy. And with us is our third man in today, former PGA player, Brad Fritsch, who is, one of the biggest Sens fans I know, but also we want to talk a little Masters because this conversation is happening on the eve of the Masters. First, Greg, how are you doing?
Well, Steve, I'm eve of the Masters. I agree. Rinky-dink par 3 contest today, but I'm looking forward to watching the tournament as always.
Yeah, Greg's a big Masters fan, big golf fan, Brad, and it's great to see you. We find you at your home in lovely Carolina somewhere.
Yeah, just outside Raleigh, North Carolina, where possible first-round opponent Carolina Hurricanes lurk. That would be a difficult matchup in my house because my son is a big Canes fan. But I think, like you said, one step at a time. Let's get in first and deal with whatever comes our way later.
Nice. Well, thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it. Let's begin, gentlemen, with a Senator optimism check because it feels good right now, but there are still 4 games to play. They have been playing really well in at least 2 of the 3 last games. So let's talk about where your heads are at as far as optimism goes, and we'll let our guest have first go at it. How are you feeling about the Sens' chances right now, Brad?
Pretty darn good considering who's been out, who's replaced guys I've never heard of, frankly. Cameron Crotty was a new name to me. Watched the game last night in Tampa, and it looked great. And Lassie Thompson comes back from I don't know where he was playing. These are all great things that are happening despite the injuries on the back end. The goaltending, I don't want to say has rounded into form, but it's been more consistent. And the big guys, the last couple games have started to step up, and you can also see the depth of the lineup. And so all those things that playoff teams need, the Sens are getting right now. And that's without Chabot in the lineup. Sanderson just returned. Huge impact in the Tampa game, obviously. Things are looking great, man. Wherever you listen, whatever you watch on TV, NHL Network, whatever, Ottawa comes up as a team nobody wants to play. And that sounds great to me. And I agree. I'm sure we'll talk about what the playoffs might look at a little bit later. But right now, it's great to see them playing really good hockey at a time when 2 weeks ago we were kind of freaking out a little bit about distractions and off-ice stuff and all that. They've been pretty single-minded, I think.
I'm not sure we will talk about their playoff potential and their matchups maybe because I feel like that's like talking about a no-hitter in the 7th inning. I want to make sure we get through this thing before we get to the next thing. But Greg, let's get your optimism level.
Well, my optimism level is 100%, Steve. I think they're in right now. You got 4 games left, 3 of them against non-playoff teams in Florida and Jersey and the Leafs. The Sens could lose the Islander game and still make it into the playoffs. Like that's how secure, as close to secure as you can get, really. I just think that New Jersey's not all that strong and floundering a little. Florida, they're due to beat Florida for crying out loud. They got to beat the Panthers at some point. Could you imagine though if it comes down to the last game of the year, they have to beat the Leafs, and that might be scary. But I think just looking at the strength of schedule, the rest of the way here, I think they're all but in as it is right now.
And you look at the standings, that helps the factor as well because they do have that tiebreaker, and it could factor in. Right now, Columbus is 2 points back, Detroit 3 back, the Islanders 3 back, and you're in a situation where Detroit and the Islanders haven't been playing that well of late as well. The Islanders out there firing their coach. That's the craziest thing ever, I think. But, that will work out nicely from the tiebreaker perspective. And I think beyond the standings – and beyond the strength of schedule and everything Brad talked about as well, I love the fact, guys, that their best players are the ones that are really leading this train right now. You look at that Tampa Bay game, like Allmark had a good game, but that might have been one of the best games I've seen Brady Tkachuk play. Not just the 4 assists, which was a career high for him, But I noted, like, from the drop of the puck, in moments where, and I don't mean to be insulting when I say this, Tkachuk is kind of in cruise control mode when the puck's not anywhere close to him. I thought he was flying around all night, like back checking, skating in areas where he generally cruises, and the 4 assists speak for themselves. You see Stützle with a big goal, Jake Sanderson with 2 absolute beauties, including one in a set play we can talk about in just a second. But that's one of the things, it's an old cliche, best players have to be your best players. But that really is, I think, what's happening. What have you seen from Tkachuk, Bradley, in terms of, it's been up and down, both on and off the ice for him right now, but or for this season. Where do you think he's at right now as far as, Brady Tkachuk at his best?
I might be cherry picking last night's performance, but I was thinking it before it happened. He seems like he's more of a playmaker these days. His goals are okay. I think 21 on the season, but he just seems to be more willing to pass this year, trying to create things instead of shoot. It might be a lingering hand thing. You never know. But obviously, the attitude towards him has changed a lot in the last 7 to 10 days. His play has picked up. It's like you said last night, and I noticed it right away. A lot of first man in, a lot of striding into the forecheck, not coasting. A lot of first guy back on the back check. Just a lot of being involved in the play when over the years he might not necessarily have been involved, coming back as the first guy or being the first man in on the forecheck if there was someone close. So it looks a lot better. I'm sure some of that has to do with the outside noise. You can't but help but hear it in this social media world, and I don't think he's immune from looking at whatever people are saying part of the time. And I think that I'm sure he's heard it from a number of different angles. So sometimes you get, as an athlete, I can speak to it a little bit. I was a golfer, not an athlete, but sometimes you get into like a comfortable rhythm that's not your best. And you feel like you're doing fine and you're doing okay. And everything's comfortable. And sometimes you need that jarring reset that says, no, you have another level. And I think he's hit that other level in the last, like I said, 7 to 10 days. And he's also been a lot more physical. And I think that was a little bit lacking over the course of the season. Not sure why, but he is definitely the Sens engine when it comes to physical play, and they'll need that come playoff time.
Greg?
Well, I think first and foremost, Brady Tkachuk is an emotional man. He feeds off his emotions. And I think that when he plays at home, like these last couple games, the crowd has been incredible. And that fires Brady up. And I think when Brady gets success early in a game, that fires him up. I think when Brady gets a big hit in early, that fires him up. He's very emotional. I don't know if you had a chance to see the latest Wingman podcast, Steve and Brad, but Brady was talking about, or Matt and Brady were talking about, how much the crowd is so excited here and how much the people of Ottawa love and support Brady. And I think that just gets them going that much more. Like extended home streaks, home stretches, home game stretches. You can see Brady get better and better as the home stretch goes on. He's just emotionally into these games lately, and the playoffs get him fired up emotionally. There's all kinds of different things that are contributing to this that are all come down to one thing. It's a charge to Brady, and it fires him up. I think that's got a lot to do with it.
Another big factor is, as Brad mentioned, the Linus Ullmark effect, in that he's been a much better goaltender since he got back from his 1 month break. There have been some glitchy moments, no question, and even by his own admission, as he was nominated for the Masterton Trophy by local writers here today, he talked a little bit about that Tampa Bay game. That was, it's not he defined it as, I'm broken. It's not every day is going to be sunshine lollipops, and he missed that Tampa Bay game because of it. And so there have been some glitchy moments both on and off the ice, but I think, and you alluded to it, Brad, and everybody said it all year, they don't need this guy to be the 2023 Vezina winner here in 2026 again. They just need him to be not bad, and they're going to have a chance. The analytics all say that. And generally speaking, Brad, I mean, is it a night and day change for you, or just a little bit better than he was?
Well, I think there have certainly been moments where he's been outstanding. There's a few saves over the past couple games where you see him explode out of the crease. And I think at the beginning of the year, there was no explosion. I think there was a lot of sitting in the crease and hoping it hit him and a few goals squeezed through. And you can always see that, when the between the arm shot, he's always squeezing. Even when he gets it, he's always like, is it good? Did it go through? I'm not sure. He's always had that in the couple of years that I've watched him closely with the Senators. But it has been better for sure. Some of the goals that have been scored are, not his fault. And you know, I- the lack of really bad goals is noticeable. Um, the one that went through on Johansson last night, Sanderson's first goal. How how much would we have freaked out if that went in on Olmark? I mean,
Yeah.
that puck it wasn't even shot. It was just dragged to the crease and it went in. But I agree with you. I think he just has to be okay. And it's similar here in Raleigh that, Anderson and Bussy just have to be okay. In an age where I think that I heard today the average the average save percentage in the NHL is 890 for the
Mhm.
season. Um, I think I don't know why that is because in past years I believe it's been over 900, and so we have to have a little bit of a reset on what average goaltending is these days. I think starting last night, Allmark's save percentage was 884, so he's just below average now, which about 2 months ago, he was, I think, the worst goalie in the league in terms of save percentage, at least one who played a lot of games. So um, I'll just go back to you're right. He just has to be pretty decent. The Sens outshoot their competition most of the time, and he doesn't see a lot of rubber. And it's a credit to the coaching staff that they've sort of created a team that plays this way because I don't know if you remember, Steve, but about 3 years ago, we saw a lot of pucks thrown at our net.
Oh, exactly. Uh, and it is a change in dynamic for sure. I mean, I didn't know that stat, to be honest. I mean, even right now, I'm thinking, okay, if you have an 8 for the start of your save percentage, you're not a good goalie. And well, it sounds like that stat and that trend has changed all around. What say you, Greg?
Oh, it's been coming down for a couple of years now, guys. It's and mostly they're chalking it up to shot selection. Players are much choosier, much more selective about when they're going to shoot. You see it all the time. Old guys still shoot the puck a lot. Claude Giroux will still wind up and take a clapper off the rush, right? Or be damned if there's some guy in front of him. He's shooting it anyway, even if it gets blocked. But today's player, over the course of the last few years, much more selective about when they're going to shoot. The quality of shots that goaltenders face is much higher than it used to be. The numbers aren't the same. They face far less shots, but the quality of them is so much higher. And that's what causes your save percentage to drop, right? The cross crease pass, the cross ice pass, the seam pass to a guy wide open on the back door and he shoots it into an empty net, right? Like we see those goals way more often now than we used to. It used to only be 3 or 4 guys score that way all the time. So that's contributed to it. I think the other thing with Allmark, I'm going to go back to emotions. I think the guy has his emotions in a much better place now than he did earlier in the year. He's much more, he says he's still broken. Okay, I can agree with that. Only he knows. But I think on a scale of 1 to 10, if he used to be a 1 or a 2 when he took his break, he's a 6 or a 7 now. He's much more sound mentally and emotionally. He's into the game much better, and I think that affects his performance. So that he's much more stoic and much more aggressive at the same time, and makes saves when he's supposed to. And you're absolutely right, Steve. He doesn't have to be great. He just has to be good. He just has to be not terrible, which he was earlier in the year at times.
All right, I'm keen to get your guys' opinion on Jordan Spence and where the Sens might be without him and that acquisition last summer, which was a beauty on draft day, and what he's going to command as a restricted free agent this summer. We'll talk about that and more coming up after these words.
Are you ready to take your Ford ownership to the next level? Introducing Ford Pass at Jim K. Ford, your passport to a world of convenience and control. Start your vehicle remotely, lock or unlock it from your smartphone, receive instant alerts about your vehicle's health, and schedule service appointments. Don't miss out on the Ford Pass revolution at Jim K. Ford, 1438 Uville Drive in Orleans, or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes!
You know, Steve, if you ever get tired of waiting in line for an oil change, you can go to Midas, make an appointment. You don't have to wait in line. You just show up whatever time you want it. They'll set up an appointment for you. Walk in, get your car done in 20 minutes, wait there for it. Maybe takes 40 minutes, but they're going to give it a good going over while it's in the shop. Check out the 5 Midas locations, midas.ca.
All right, as promised, let's talk a little bit about Jordan Spence, gentlemen. And of course, we're joined by former PGA player Brad Fritsch here, noted Sens aficionado, and also we're going to talk some Masters with Brad here in a moment as well. But I'd be keen to get your take on the surprise season of Jordan Spence. Here's a guy who started the year, Brad, as a healthy scratch, and now with all the injuries, you know, there's been a couple of games where I think he's eclipsed over 30 minutes. He's chipping in big time offensively. And what has been your general impressions or your surprise level about Jordan Spence and his rise, particularly in the second half of the year?
Yeah, I think slow growth at the beginning, right? Took a little while to get him in the lineup. I remember one game where he got sort of bullied for the winning goal, and that earned him a seat back on the bench or in the press box for a while. At full strength, obviously we don't have Nick Jensen anymore, but at full strength, I could see why he was sitting for a while. He was sort of the unknown. He was the guy that nobody knew much about. I think sometimes we take it for granted that a lot of the coaching staff and the players know every player in the league. And when you only play a team once or twice a year, they might not have known who Jordan Spence was from their brother. It was a complete unknown, I think, for Travis Green, because you could see at the beginning how reticent he was to play him. Now you had Nick Matanpalo as the sort of the right-handed third line defenseman, and he's no slouch. He's played very well as well. So I think just, Jensen, unfortunately, not fully rehabbing that hip or getting hurt again or whatever the case may be. It's provided that opportunity for Spence to move both onto the second line and play on the third line. So he's gotten sort of a mix of partners, and I'm sure that he's felt a little more free with certain partners than other to kind of explore his offensive upside. And, just the shot last night in Tampa, jumped into the rush with Brady Tkachuk, took a nice pass, and that was a goal scorer's goal, roofed it far right side, glove hand, and he didn't hesitate. And so that's sort of a really good sign when you just get this, when you acquire this defenseman that you really didn't know a lot about, both as a fan and as maybe a coaching staff. And all of a sudden you can plug him in. And like you said, on the disastrous nights when we only had 5 defensemen and all 5 were right-hand shots, I don't know that that's ever going to happen again in an NHL game. He played over 30 minutes. And so that was an indication of trust, right? That's an indication of we need this guy and we trust him. And so the evolution from game 1 to game now 78, 79 is pretty jarring. And now you can just go and play in the playoffs, as you can put them wherever you want. And now they have this luxury of Artem Zub, Jordan Spence, and an Olympian in Matanpalo, and you don't have a care in the world about putting any of them on at any time.
I've liked Spence a lot, Greg, and in terms of the skating, he's got good puck skill, and he's actually, for the guy's size, he throws his weight around pretty good compared to, say, like a Thomas Chabot, who's just not physical whatsoever. Spence actually, even though he's a smaller man, he throws it around pretty decently, though as I've talked about on previous episodes, it seems like his mistakes are very, very glaring. Brad alluded to that.
Not so much anymore.
Well, no, but he had that one recently where he and Linus Ullmark get, kind of crossed up, right? And that was a bad one. And then, and I could go through 3 or 4 others, but I'm more here to praise the guy than bury him. I'm just making the point that, his mistakes have been more of the calamitous variety, and you don't want to see that continue on into the playoffs. And they're happening less and less, granted, and certainly Allmark shared some of the blame on that. But what's your thought, and what's he going to cost this summer? He's 1.5 million right now, and then you have to start thinking about the other guys on the blue line right now. Yakamchuk is knocking on the door. Though he gets sent down today. You've still got Artem Zub. You've got decisions to make, and what do you pay Jordan Spence?
Yeah. First, I still maintain that the Alphonse Gaston, you got it, I'll take it routine there on that goal with Allmark. I still maintain it was icing, and I don't know why it wasn't called. But anyway, moving on.
I still maintain that. Wait a sec. I still maintain that is the oldest reference in radio/podcast history. I think that goes back to what the like silent movies.
Alphonse Gaston, I don't know where it's from. I don't know.
Pretty sure it's silent movies because I looked it up.
The biggest thing to me in Jordan Spence's game, there's 2 factors here. Number one, and it's like a chicken and an egg thing. He's got confidence. Clearly, he has confidence to be the type of player that he is. And it's not even the type of player he's become. He always was this type of player. He just didn't have the confidence. And the other big one was, and Brad mentioned the word trust. Travis Green, like any coach, is going to dole out ice time based on trust. Do I trust this guy to do this job in this situation? I think you can both remember there was a game earlier this year in overtime where somebody was injured, and the second defenseman getting all the ice time was Clevin in overtime. Do you remember that night? And we're all going like, what's going on? Spence still can't even get out here. But I think that as the season is worn on, he goes from the press box to playing slowly but surely. Travis Green and probably more importantly, assistant coach Nolan Baumgartner develop some trust in this kid, and they have some faith in him. That leads to minutes. Those minutes lead to confidence. That confidence leads to the game we're seeing now. And as to how much they're going to have to pay him, Steve, I think it comes down to, are they in a situation now where this guy's in your top 4? Are they in a situation now where this guy they've always been shopping for maybe becomes a 5, 6, 7 guy instead? Maybe they don't need to go find a top 4 because you've got Spence to start the year in the top 4, or even Yakamchuk, and Yakamchuk is the heir apparent to that slot. So therefore, you don't need to find a top 4 guy. And if that's the approach that the Senators believe moving forward, then they might be having to cough up some bucks here. Like this might be a $4 to $5 million defenseman at some point, unfortunately, right? They'll probably want to do it for 3 or so. But I'm thinking, depending on how they use him moving forward, to how they use him through the playoffs when they get there, that will feed into his demand, and that will also feed into the Senators' offer. So it could get really interesting. I could see it being anywhere from $3 million to $5 million, depending on the approach that each side wants to take.
Yep, and who's ready to play? Yakamchuk is their 7th overall pick from 2024, and he's about to complete his 2nd season since his draft day. And today, as we speak here on a Wednesday, he was sent down to the minors. And I think I'm keen to get you guys' take on this, in that there's obviously, it's a reasonable move. If you feel the guy's not quite ready and you don't want to rush him to the ferocious playoff chase here and now, that's quite sensible. But you're doing so while you're going with 2 other righties in Cam Crotty and Lassie Thompson, who I think quite fairly would be behind him in Belleville on the depth chart, and yet they decide to send him back anyway. I'll get your takes. Are you guys surprised to see Yakamchuk go down? The concussion isn't an issue because you cannot be sent down if you have an injury. So he's obviously healthy and ready to go for the final 5 games in Belleville. They're not going to make the playoffs. So they're sending him down. Maybe Dennis Gilbert's ready to go, don't know. But he's surprised that Crotty stays, Thompson stays, but Yakamchuk, this top prospect, is sent down, Brad.
Yeah, I think from the defensive side of the puck, probably not super surprised. I think that, especially in the Tampa game last night, both guys were very, very solid. And maybe if Sanderson still wasn't ready, they'd want that power play anchor in Yakamchuk. But Sanderson's back, ran the power play beautifully, scored 2 goals. I do think that defensively, and I think this is system wide, fandom wide. I think everyone probably knows that Yakamchuk's bugaboo is the defensive side of the game. I think the other two guys are more men. They're stronger, and I think they're a little more mistake free than him. And so the last couple games, you could probably do with a simpler game, less flair, and just play your 30 to 35 seconds, get off the ice, mistake free. I think that's probably the thinking, although I'm just guessing, but I think that's the way to go, I think. And I guess I'm not surprised. And again, a little rehab after a concussion in the minors is not the biggest that's not a bad thing either, I don't think.
Greg?
Well, I think it comes down to first and foremost Travis Green again, and who does he trust? And I don't think he trusts Yakamchuk to play defense. I get that. Perfectly understandable. The other factor is you want Yakamchuk to play. So do you want him to sit up here in the press box, or do you want him to go to Belleville and play? Cameron Crotty can sit in the press box. Like, he's been good. Don't get me wrong. He's been very good. Defensive guy, plays his position. He's physical. He's been on the PK. I like him. He fits in nicely, but he's probably a better guy, or Lassie Thompson, flip one in, flip one out, depending on the opposition that night. Those are the two better guys to be hanging around up here and maybe not playing. It comes down to fit as well. So what does Yakamchuk bring his strengths to the lineup that we need? And his strengths, as Brad just alluded to, are offensive, and you don't necessarily need it from a bottom pair D at this point in the season. When it gets to playoffs, I don't know that I want that guy on the ice. I'd rather have a steady Eddie physical presence in a Crotty, in a Matt and Palo, even in Lassie Thompson's even more physical, even though he's brought some offense. He was leading the American League in defenseman goal scoring at one point. But the combination of fit and coach trust, I think, dictates that it's Yakamchuk who goes down. And it's only 5 games. He'll be up again for the playoffs. Maybe he's only going down for these last couple of games down there, and then he's right back up here as soon as the Belleville season's over. That's probably the case.
Yeah, they're not making it. No, I agree with everything both you guys said. When we're talking about the surprise level, I'm not surprised for the same reasons you guys are, just based on eyeball test and just the way he's looked and what he delivers. It's just in general, the circumstances of him being such a high draft pick. Like, if you went in your mind's eye back to the start of this season and I told you that, yeah, Yakamchuk is going to get sent down for Cam Crotty and Lassie Thompson. Like, I'm not measuring him up against an NHL veteran, a seasoned defensive player. I'm measuring him up against these two guys. And with respect, they have 35 games of combined NHL experience between them. And so I find it just sort of fascinating and surprising, sort of in the big picture, that a guy that was drafted that high, 7th overall in 2024, is the one that's being sent down. And you're also dealing with guys from that draft. Like, God, anybody who saw that Capitals game and saw what Cole Hudson brings to the table, I think he's been a point a game or something since he's been in the league. You got guys who are playing tons of games like Zane Parekh and Sam Dickinson, and we're still waiting. And so that's where my surprise lies, not from actually, because I agree with it. I think for all the reasons you guys talked about, it's the right move at this stage of the game, because every shift is so huge and you can't make those calamitous mistakes at this time of the year with 4 games left, and certainly not in the playoffs. So I think it's a good decision. And Thomas Chabot might be coming back, fellas. And it was supposed to be 4 to 8 weeks. And here he is at practice yesterday. He's there. That's his first time back at practice. And today, and it was just an optional, but the non-contact jersey came off. Are we going to see this guy even before he wasn't supposed to be like second round conference final if they make it that far? And are we going to see him earlier, Brad? And what will he deliver to this banged up blue line that they've got going?
Well, apparently, according to you, not physical play, but via podcast and via text, if I recall.
Yes.
But I think if you ask, number one, I think he's the heartbeat of the Ottawa Senators organization inside the organization. He's been there for so long. He was, I believe, the first one to commit to this rebuild. And, you go up and down the employees of the Sens, they absolutely love him. He bleeds the black and gold. As much as he's not a physical player, he is like one of those hockey warriors. He'll play through broken bones, and he'll play just fine. I think he's an excellent player. I think he brings to the team the puck moving that for some reason not a lot of people see or acknowledge. Yeah, he gets walked through sometimes. Yeah, he doesn't hit, but man, he's a senator. And if you see him back before the playoffs or in the first round of the playoffs, that's just another example of what he's willing to do, like walk over coals in order to play hockey games. It's crazy how tough he is. It really is.
Greg?
I wonder, has somebody invented the shooting cast? I'm familiar with the walking cast, but is he now wearing a shooting cast? Like he wasn't just shooting pucks; he was dangling. He was doing everything that you'd never know if you walked in off the street and watched that practice. You'd never know that he's apparently still got a cast on his arm, from what I'm led to believe. It's very impressive. But to speak to him being in the lineup, yeah, I think he'll be in the lineup before the playoffs start, because if he's going to be ready to go for playoffs, they're going to want to get him in at least one game before the playoffs, so maybe even sooner. But yeah, what he brings to the room is just as important as what he brings to the ice. And Steve, I know how big a fan you are, but I agree with Brad. There are intangibles to his game. There are things that he does that you don't necessarily notice. He's very good at moving the puck. He's got great feet. He's got speed. On the offensive side, he's very, very good. He just doesn't close a lot down low. He doesn't get physical in corners. He doesn't necessarily knock guys down in front of the net. Okay, 65 didn't do that here ever, and he managed to etch out a pretty good career for himself. I just think Thomas Chabot's an important piece. Not to mention also how tight he is with the guys, right? Like he's one of the tight buds. This is a very tight group. So I just think he brings things to this team. And if he steps up and he's ready to go for playoffs, like look out. Now your blue line is back to where it's supposed to be. And they're gonna give Carolina a run for their money.
You know, I was on Sens Reddit and they were talking about various Sens podcasts in town. And one of the people on there was talking up our show. They liked it. And they said, with the exception of Warren's psychotic obsession with running down Thomas Chabot, I really enjoy the show. And maybe it's time to reassess, because I always have this idea in my head of what I think is the perfect defenseman. I just want to see more physicality and just more jam on the defensive side. I certainly love him just like everybody else as far as his skating and his passing and his creativity. I just wish I'd see a little more of that. But it's time to maybe reassess, because you know, when we saw this team really go sour here recently, it was because not Jake Sanderson was absent, but because Jake Sanderson and Thomas Chabot were absent. When it was just Sanderson, their record was actually really, really good, something like 7-1-2. But when Chabot also comes out of the lineup, that's when they had that speed wobble here down the stretch until Sanderson got back. So, yeah. So anyway, it's definitely.
It might be a Steve thing, because my younger brother, Steve, he's right around where you are with Thomas Chabot. So it might be something tied to that. You never know.
Yeah. So hopefully he's back.
I have a question for Fritzy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fritzy.
Question for Brad. How's what's his name? Freddie Anderson. I have a vision of Freddie Anderson being the backup goalie here next year, signed as a free agent. How's he look? How's he playing? Is he a guy who can come here and play 30 games next year for this team and do all right? Like, what are your thoughts on Freddie Anderson?
Oh, I'm sure he could come and play 30 games. I'm not sure that you would want to see those 30 games if you were a
There you go.
paying customer. It's been a tough year for him. Now, defensively, Carolina hasn't been the same team this year. The whole team save percentage is not good. I think they're 28th in the league in save percentage. And it's really strange, because Brandon Bussey has 30 wins, and yet he's been marginally better in the last 2 months than Freddie Anderson. So the one positive for Anderson this year, he's been healthy, and that's never been the case. So there's one thing about Anderson, his playoff save percentage. I know this for a fact because I listen to the radio here. It's .915. They don't lose because he's been bad in the playoffs. They lose because they play Vezina type goaltenders, and they've never had their guys step up offensively. So it's going to be an interesting playoffs for them because can they get over that offensive hump? They're scoring a ton of goals. I don't know if you've noticed, tons of goals. But the goaltending hasn't been great here for about 2 months. So could he come and play? Yes, he'd be fairly cheap. I think he's getting paid like something nominal, 1.5 or $2 million or something this year. I could be wrong, but I think that's correct. But he's just been okay, and I don't think he's been less than okay, and he's not in their plans for next year. I can pretty much guarantee that. So, he's better than James Reimer, but James Reimer has been not too bad.
I was just going to put a vote in for him.
Yeah, like it's tougher being a goalie now than it was 5 years ago, to Greg's point earlier. And I think all of our expectations have not changed for goalies.
Right.
And so the more that these stats get out there, I think I heard one the other day, 2 teams have a save percentage over 900. I believe it's Colorado and Minnesota. Like, what would you have said to that 10 years ago? Like, there were guys with 930s, 935s. You don't get that anymore. And so I think we all have to kind of, reset our expectations for goalies. Long-winded, Greg, but I think they could definitely do better.
Right.
But he is like 20 games, 30 games, sure. But can you get 50 to 55 out of Hallmark? I don't
There's
know
the
that
rub.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know that. So you certainly don't want to be like, hey, I need a reset of a month. Freddie, take the reins. That might not go well.
I think we're seeing, though, that this year that you absolutely need a platoon situation for Linus Ullmark. It's not that
100%.
Linus Ullmark will necessarily be the inferior goalie or anything like that, but I think that there's a reason he won the Vezina in 2023 because he was effectively a platoon guy. So I think you do need to bring in a guy that's not just going to be that, standard, 25 games a year guy. You're going to need a guy who's going to play half the games. And I think that is why that's when Linus Ullmark is at his best, and may also have had, certainly there's lots going on in his life, but it may have been one small factor in why he had to take some time away. It's like all the pressure's on me. It's all on me. Levi Marilina got sent down to the minors. It's just me now. I'm the guy. I'm making $8 million. So that could have played into the factor as well. So it's a good conversation to have, Greg, about who will be the backup goalie, and we can certainly get into that in future episodes. But I do want to talk here on the eve of the Masters. Oh, you get the music going here. Love that. A tradition unlike any other. So good. So good. We're about to start. And I wonder, Brad, and I do want to certainly, for our listeners, because we've talked about it before, you and I, but I don't think we talked about it on this show necessarily. The old SWP we did, but you had a really special round at Augusta with a pretty special guest. So I want to get to that in a second. And as a Senator tie-in, for those who have not heard the story, but what do you think is, for you, the most interesting storyline entering the 2026 Masters?
So I was thinking about this earlier today because knowing that we were going to do this podcast, and I think the most notable thing about this Masters is that there is not one dominant storyline, controversy. Scotty Scheffler's not dominating this year. Live versus PGA Tour seems to have simmered down quite a bit. Patrick Reed left, Brooks Koepka got back on the PGA Tour. All that noise is considerably less. You've had a lot of guys sort of step up this year, but no one's dominating the PGA Tour. There's no career Grand Slam talk anymore for Rory. There are no distractions this year, which I think is sort of fascinating. So everyone, it sounds like, is just going about their business at the Masters. They don't have to address anything from Monday to Wednesday. The past years, that has not been the case. And so I think with the way it's going to play this year, which is firm, fast, a little bit of wind, it's going to be warm. I think at least a couple of the days, especially the weekend, it could get pretty awesome in terms of the leaderboard. Like this is going to be, I think, one of those, like the top 5 are the dudes of the tour. Um, so I'm looking forward to that. I would be lying if I thought about who's going to win. There's a ton of guys who it wouldn't surprise me if they did. It's always hard to pick a first time winner of a major, and even the first time winner of a Masters, because Augusta is such a place where familiarity breeds much better golf than you're usually capable of. And I'll use the 2 examples. Freddie Couples in his late 40s used to appear on the leaderboard out of nowhere. And he wouldn't have played for 5 weeks because his back was hurting. And he goes and shoots 68 in the first round. You're like, what? Why? It's because he loves the place. Bernard Longer a couple years ago finished in the top 10 or 12 as a 60-some-year-old. Crazy. But he's been there for 40 years. So I think the guys who have been there a lot and who have won there have a distinct advantage over guys who have been there a little bit and who haven't won, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. I think my favorite storyline is going to be, it's more of a prediction, and Greg will get your favorite storyline going into it. I wonder, will Tiger Woods accidentally drive his vehicle into Butler Cabin accidentally? That's one thing to keep an eye on. That's just one for me. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, Toonces the cat may show up at the first tee. for you older folks out there, you'll get that. I think one of the stories that came out this week or last week at some point was that this is going to be the first Masters with no Tiger and no Phil combined in the field. Okay, so what? Neither of them was going to be a contributing factor, but it's a big deal probably for television ratings because everybody watches Tiger's every shot, everybody watches Phil's every shot. But I don't care about that either because I'm watching the golfers. I want to watch a good tournament. And I think the biggest thing about this week for the PGA Tour is anybody who's been sort of kind of hot so far this year is a majors nobody. There isn't really anybody coming into this week who is a front runner who's been dominating. As Brad said, Scotty's not playing well or not dominating. Rory hasn't been dominating. You've got a lot of guys here. The hottest guys this year haven't won majors, haven't even been to the Masters before. So I think that it's going to be kind of cool to see how many of these guys can have an effect on this and how many of these guys that are quote unquote coming out of nowhere are going to be factors and how they're going to react and play, especially come Sunday afternoon if they're in contention. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of names are in the top 10 come Sunday. I think you could have a lot of guys who a lot of people have never heard of.
Brad, I missed you there, and you were reacting to something Greg said, and I lost you in the Zoom.
He said, "Oh, Scotty not playing well for him. He wasn't playing well for him.
For him.
Yeah.
So what's going on with Scotty?
Yeah, which means he's won, and he's had a couple of top 10s. Well, his wife just had a baby 12 days ago. So I imagine some of that's weighing on his mind, but they're all there this week. I saw. And I just think he's tailor-made for that course. The short game, chipping and pitching, is going to be really important this week because of how difficult it's going to play. Probably a little bit harder than usual to hit as many greens in regulation as they normally do. And his short game is number 1 in the world. So I'm sure he's the betting favorite. I would take him if I bet anywhere, but like I said before, I think Scheffler, Rahm, Schauffele, maybe Cam Young. He's Greg's talking about major virgins, no Masters wins. That could be a guy. He's had an excellent year. And then first timers like Chris Gotterup, who won 3 times, I think, after the Masters last year. So it's his first time there, but he has 3 wins in a calendar year. So he's an awesome player, and he's won a couple of difficult tournaments too. He won the Scottish Open last summer, so he'd be one I would look at. But again, like I said, the guys who have been there the most love it the most, and they play it the best. So I think guys who've been around there 8-10 times usually are the ones that I would pick as favorites.
Bryson DeChambeau is always an interesting one. Over the last few years, he's so transformed his personality in the public eye. He used to be so prickly, and now maybe thanks in part to his YouTube channel, but it's obviously a concerted effort to just be out there with a smile and be more pleasant with people. And his YouTube channel is actually quite compelling. He's actually quite he seems like a believably sincerely nice guy, but when you see the transformation, you wonder, is it sincere? What say you about Bryson DeChambeau and I guess the cheerability of him as a golfer?
You're asking me.
Uh,
I've had one or two encounters with him. It was long ago. He was in his early 20s, I think, before his transformation. And yeah, he was a great golfer back then, and he's still a great golfer. You can read into that what you'd like. But he certainly has found his niche, right? Almost to the point where he treats it more seriously than his day job, which is being a professional golfer on whichever tour, either the majors or live golf. So, obviously uber talented. He's got shots that others don't. Carries the ball 330, 340. Only a handful of the guys in the world do that. And his short game is pretty remarkable considering sort of the technique that he uses is not conventional. So he showed up in the majors a bunch the last couple of years, won the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. I think he once remarked that Augusta is a par 67 for him. And I think that will never leave him. And if it was me, it would never leave my head that I said that. And it would affect me negatively for the rest of my life as I competed in the Masters. He's probably stronger than that, but he's got the game for there. There's no doubt. I just think that other guys have a little bit more of an advantage there than he does. But, would it surprise me if he was wearing a green jacket? Absolutely not. Like he's won at least once on Live this year, maybe twice. So again, uber talented. Like you said, a transformation, whether it's genuine or not, I have no idea. I'll take the word of some guys who said it is. But gosh, man, when he's in contention, the golf is thrilling. He hits at places where most don't, sometimes offline. His recovery shots are amazing. And again, his short game is, you wouldn't think it would be world class, but it absolutely is.
Greg, what
Is
say
every
you?
club in is every iron in his bag really a 6 iron length? Is that the shaft basically is a 6 iron shaft in all his irons?
Like it was a 7. I don't know. Like they don't
7?
talk about it much anymore, do they? Like they really
Yeah,
don't.
no.
But back when he was starting out, yeah, everything was a 7 iron length, including his wedges, which blew my mind. Um,
Yeah.
which contributed to him like, oh, it's a pitching wedge from 180 yards. You're like, holy cow, that's okay.
Bryson reminds me of a latter day, a new day Greg Norman. He's a guy who's going to be have a huge following, capable of shooting 63, but just as capable as shooting 75. Right? That's Bryson. When Bryson plays his A game, I would say, yeah, par for him would be 67 there, wouldn't it? His A game, mind you. But you're not going to bring your A game every day, and he doesn't. And I think that's the up and down, the highs and lows of Bryson is kind of what reminds me of Greg Norman, that he's a guy who going into this, oh man, people will be cheering for him. His fan club will be out. They'll be all over him, but he could just as easily shoot 75 as 65.
That comment just a moment ago that Brad made about, the whole thing about DeChambeau saying that the Masters or the Augusta is a par 67, and that would drive Brad crazy if he had said that. I can attest to that. It was, I think, the year that you made the PGA Tour, and we did an interview. It was JR and me, and they were interviewing us for television. And I think you were in earshot of it when I was, just grasping at things to say about you because we're being interviewed about you. And I think I said, he is Ottawa's Tiger Woods. And you were like, oh my God, how dare you? So I can see you having a problem with that particular comment.
Sometimes I have a hard time relating to guys with excessive self-confidence in their golf game.
Right.
honestly. There's guys on the ice who'll try anything because they're uber confident. They're guys who won't. I would be in the won't category. I just was always like, man, I'm so lucky to be here. But I think one of the characteristics of most guys who make it to the top of the PGA Tour is maybe not outwardly all of them, but they all think they can hit any shot they want
Right.
at any time. And that's the self belief is, it's not half the battle, but it sure helps. And so the guys who are up there, and that includes DeChambeau, they think they can do whatever they want on a golf course. And I think that's probably what led to a comment like that. And, I bet you that in retrospect, and maybe 5 seconds after he said it, he might have been, oh, why did I say that? And, you're not going to get anyone to take it back in the media, right? Like they're going to write it. And so, you got to live with that for a while. But I think generally nobody really talks about that anymore. But again, big picture, puts a green jacket on Sunday, not shocked, right? Not shocked at all.
Yeah. All right. We should get to the story.
Yeah.
You got an opportunity to play Augusta National.
Yeah.
How did that come together, and who was your special guest that day?
So let's see, it was May of 2013, so my first year on the PGA Tour. And for anyone who doesn't know, Augusta closes late May, and they reopen, I think, in October or November, something like that. The summer months are not conducive to grass growing in the south, and they do a lot of projects at Augusta every year. And with the expanse of social media now, you can basically, someone will fly a drone way high up in the air, and you'll be able to see what they're doing every summer at Augusta. And it's always like, oh, a new tee here. They've purchased a new tract of land. They're constantly, the golf course um, property is constantly expanding what Augusta National owns. They're buying little tracts of land, little by little throughout the years. But anyway, May of 2013, my sponsor, his name's Barry. His business partner is a member at Augusta. And I haven't really broached the subject. We'd only known each other for just over a year at that point. But he said, hey, do you want to come play Augusta National with me and Mark? And I said, yeah, that would be amazing. And he said, great, Alfie's coming too. And so it wasn't my guess. He knew Daniel Alfredsson. I can't remember exactly how, but I can't remember exactly how, but he knows a bunch of NHL players, and he gotten to know Daniel as well. And he said, great, we're picking up Alfie. So he's flying from Toronto to Ottawa, picks up Alfie. This is on a jet, mind you. We'll meet you in Raleigh at 5 p.m. And then I had to learn where the FBO is in Raleigh. Like, I don't fly on private jets, so I had to learn where that was, and got on the airplane about 5:15. We flew to Augusta. Everything you could think it was, just from the airport to the golf course. Mercedes Sprinter van. Here, I'll take your stuff. Are you sure? I don't want to leave my clubs. They're like, sir, they'll be on the first tee tomorrow morning for your tee time. Okay. I'm not one who parts with my clubs very easily, but you know, Augusta employees, I'll let it slide, of course. We stayed at one of the cabins just left of the 10th tee box. So the ones that we saw that year that Rory duck hooked that tee shot, let me tell you what, that's as bad a tee shot as you've ever hit, Steve.
You've
That
seen the
shot.
bad ones.
Like, it's horrendous. You can't imagine, like 70 yards and the ball goes 90 degrees to the left. Like
Wow.
that. Yeah, you can't believe it. And then of course you're thinking, like, where do I hit it from here? Of course. So anyway, we stayed there. We had dinner at Augusta that night, or at the golf course. Um, Tooled around, looked at the par three course, stayed in those cabins, and then the next morning woke up, had breakfast. The great thing about Augusta National, what would you like to eat, sir? Well, what do you have? He goes, what would you like to eat? You can't say something that they don't have.
Nice.
So anything that you want, you can get. So we teed off. It was the day before their member closing. So again, closes at near the end of May. But myself, Barry, Mark, and Daniel Alfredsson. Daniel and I played the back tees. And again, this is May, so just coming out of the season. I don't remember what they did in 2013, but they were not playing hockey. So this is his first round. And so, unfortunately for Daniel, it was a difficult round. I actually birdied the first hole. It was my only birdie of the day, but I'd like you, when you see anything related to the first hole at Augusta, I hit it right of the bunker, of the fairway bunker. And if you watch it on the telecast, you're like, well, there's nothing over there. You can't make birdie from there. Well, somehow I managed to make birdie from right of the bunker. But it was a wonderful day, man. My impressions of Augusta National were without the crowds that, of course, you're accustomed to seeing during the Masters, surrounding the greens, sort of framing every green, making the green look very receiving and very it makes them look larger than they are.
Right.
Because when you get down to it, Augusta National is the greens are in the middle of nothing. Like the trees aren't close to the greens, right? The majority of them. So there's these little greens in the middle of a field, the 9th green, the 18th green, real close to each other. You're hitting into them like, where am I supposed to hit it? If I don't hit it right at the flag, I'm missing the green. That's how small they seem to me. So it was an awesome experience. Certain holes, like number 10, dog leg left down the hill, the green looks about the size of a pinhole from the tee. It's just amazing how small it looks. Number 13, I can't believe there have been so many good second shots into that green over the years because it is so small. And from how far they're coming out with 4 irons and hybrids and 5 woods and whatever. Um, that just speaks to how good the players are and how dialed in they are when they're playing their absolute best in the final groups on a Sunday. Because, gosh, man, there's a lot of shots that are so perilous, and just to me, the level of execution has to be so good. And I don't think I've come across a golf course where it's not that the tee shots are super difficult. They're not. And it's not that one certain shot into a green can be overly difficult, because not all of them are. But there's certain shots at certain times in the round where you're like, well, I'd just rather lay up here. And, um, in the Masters where you're trying to make your hay on 13 and 15 and 16 on the back nine, I can't believe that guys have done what they've done over the years there, but it happens year after year. Like the 7 iron on 15 is outrageous last year by Matt Gilroy. Outrageous.
Yeah.
I can't believe he hit that shot. So yeah, that was our experience. I shot 77 with one birdie. I believe Alfie shot 91. He probably will never speak to me again. But again, first round of the year, first round of his season, and playing the back tees at Augusta, I'll give him a pass on that for sure.
Final question to you, Greg.
Well, the big thing to me is that you didn't mention the elevation changes. That seems to be the first thing that everyone talks about. Has
Yeah,
never been there before. Is it
right.
you mentioned 10 and 11, and then you're going up on some of the holes in the front nine. It's crazy, isn't it? That people don't
100%
necessarily
it
know.
is. I think now I take it for granted now because I have been back as
Sure.
media in 2017, did TSN, and then I've been back hosting for a private group. Took people along in practice rounds and just walked them uh, alongside certain groups, like outside the ropes. And so I've been there 3 or 4 different times. And yes, you're 100% right. That's sort of the legend of it, right? Anyone who has been
Right.
there will say, I can't believe how hilly it is. And so yes, 100%. It's a hard walk, man. It's no
Yeah.
joke.
Oh yeah.
And especially as a spectator, when you're not walking, number 10 is 510 yards. You probably have to walk 600 to 650 as a spectator. You got to go wide around some parts, come back. Every single hole is not, obviously, as a spectator, not a direct line, from tee to green. So it's not an easy walk, and it is again, magical place. They do everything so perfectly there. And the fact that you never see anyone with a phone is the icing on the cake. They're there to watch with their eyeballs, which is awesome.
Amazing. Living vicariously through former PGA player Brad Fritsch, who's also following the Sens along with the rest of us. And it could get a little dicey at the Fritsch household if it's Carolina and Ottawa in the first round. Gentlemen, we must get together maybe again. Conference final. How about that for the Sens? I'm calling it right now. Boom, shakalaka.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Hey. Stranger things have happened.
I don't hate it.
Nor I. Brad, thank you so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Some housekeeping before we go. SensNationHockey.com is our website. Thanks to our great sponsors, Jim K. Ford, our title sponsor, and our friends at Midas Ottawa as well. CJRO Radio, thank you for carrying us on terrestrial radio in the east end of Ottawa on 107 FM. And I believe that will about do it for today. Greg, any final thoughts today?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Richie. I keep saying I can't say it. Thanks, Brad.
You are
coming on.
You are about the 6,793rd person who has called me that after meeting me, I think, for the first time. So that is totally okay. It happens all around the world. It has happened all around the world, and it's totally okay.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. But this has been great, and I would look forward to getting together and doing this again, Steve. I agree. We should do this again during the playoffs.
Sounds good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us today. We'll talk to you next time.